Hello and welcome to the next part in the series of an immunity. And today we're going to talk about exercise. And like all the other videos, just offering you or inviting you into getting a sense of if this is going to be the modality that's going to give you the most bang for your buck. So if exercise, like for me, it comes up for you as being a struggle, a challenge, you can't do it, or even if you exercise too much, don't be don't lose focus of that as well. Sometimes over exercising can be an effect, but usually it might come up as maybe a little bit of resistance around a particular thing. It might be a voice in your head that says, "Oh, I should be doing more of that," or I've got this under control. That generally tends to be a bit of evidence that it might be something to work with. So for me personally, exercise was something that, I just can't get myself going, can't do it. It's very apathetic feeling towards it, and so I knew there was something that I needed to work with there um, in order to benefit myself. And so I had to just generally create a small bit of a routine of realistic expectations in which I could build myself up to that. But exercise, without doubt, is I think there's no argument against about the how beneficial exercise can be for us. Um, and the reason for that, why, lots of different reasons. I'll go through them. It basically pumps fluids around your body. So when we think about that lymphatic system that I mentioned about in our first video in the immune system, which brings your white blood cells around your whole body. This system requires movement in order to pump things because it doesn't have, not like the circulatory system, which has a heart, which has a muscle that pumps blood around the body. This does not have it. So that's one of the biggest things. And so getting that pumped around, it creates communication of this white blood cell network around our bodies and helps with that. Exercise also, it upregulates or increases the expression of what's called your superoxide dismutase, so your SOD2 gene. This gene supports your antioxidants within the cell mitochondria. So this is one of the reasons why we feel so good and fresh after exercise. So at a cellular level, we're basically detoxifying. Okay. It also increases our opioid production, has a direct effect on our immune system. It increases oxidants, but then the body has a massive surge of antioxidants. So there is a bit of a breakdown that happens when you do exercise. So, muscle tissue starts to break down a little bit. That's why you might feel a bit sore. But then afterwards, it does have this massive surge in antioxidants. And that's going back to that superoxidized dismutase, that gene. That's a big part of that. So one of the questions that people say, and this might go to the population of people who probably over-exercise more than under-exercise. If you feel ill, should you exercise? And essentially, going back to our sleep video, that's the number one supplement, and that's the thing you should be doing when you are ill. So no to that. You should not be exercising when you are ill. You should be resting, you should be sleeping, you should be repairing, you should be recovering. Your vital energy or life force should be going inwards internally, and it should not be going outwards externally. How much exercise? Basically, the answer to that is, and a lot of the research is showing, is moderate intensity exercise. And I'll go into answering that by going on to the next one. Everybody's going to have a different marker, so it's a very unique question for each person. The evidence is showing that if we can exercise in a way that's not increasing that free radical or that really overburdening those increased oxidances, and how we can do that is by exercising to
accidentally kicked the soccer ball. Well, I didn't. I tried to kick the soccer ball. Who went into the bush and I can't find it.
Okay. Let me finish this and I'll come out and help you, okay?
How long will it take?
Like 5 minutes.
Can I rollerblade while I wait?
Not in here, you can't. Just mop the whole place.
Can I rollerblade outside?
Outside you can, yeah. I don't know how you can do that.
I'll go on the concrete. Didn't I come my helmet or what?
Sorry about that. 1 second. Let's get this up again. Yeah, so basically, if you're, where was I? I was talking about how much, oh yeah, so basically to reduce that, those oxidants that are a byproduct of exercise, if you can exercise where you're not going into what's called, you're not being fully going into what's called fight or flight. And what that basically means is that you're not pushing your exercise to where you're mouth breathing, where you're panting, where your kind of life force is going more up into your chest, your shoulders. And that sounds very abstract, but basically the indication is that when you're exercising, when you're running, that you're nasal breathing, okay? So what I mean by that is that you're not mouth breathing. And so if you can exercise where you're maintaining nasal breathing, big, long, deep breaths, big, long out breaths, and you're continuing that pace, you're going at that pace or that endurance or that intensity where you can maintain that, that breathing cycle, what you'll start finding is that you'll start getting into what's called cadence. You'll get into this rhythmical running where you feel almost like you could keep on running. It's a very expansive feeling. Now, this isn't something that happens overnight. It's something you have to work with. It took me a long time to work with this, okay? But it goes into answering the question of how much exercise, okay? You should kind of exercise really where you're able to you're able to perform where you're not going into that mouth breathing for too much, okay? So with your warm up, you should be warming up where you can nasal breathe pretty easily, okay? But then as you increase your intensity, it'll become a lot harder. And then you kind of stay with that and just find that edge where you're just working under that edge where you're not mouth breathing, and then maintain that and then do your cool down, okay? For men, they're saying, look, at least 3 times a week, and for half an hour at a time. For someone who is maybe hasn't done a whole lot of exercise, then start with a brisk walk where you are getting that heart rate up, okay? Something like that. But really, the real indicator is in terms of how intense you're doing it. If you're going hell for leather, and you're doing it 5 or 6 times a week and you're mouth breathing a lot, you're probably stressing out your system more than anything else. So you're really focusing on control, breathing, and then still getting your sweat on, still getting the intensity, but it's very controlled, okay? Athletes, you know, I used to be an athlete as well, and it was more performance orientated. And unfortunately, with performance, I'm not putting that down in the sense that it shouldn't happen, because it's a very natural thing of being a human, is competition, is performance, and all this. But what it tends to be is it tends to be more head dominant. It tends to be more tunnel vision. It tends to be more mouth breathing. It tends to be more fight or flight. And so my suggestion about getting more controlled exercise would mainly be pushed towards, or mainly focused towards athletes. And it is definitely a bit of a paradigm shift in terms of exercise, but you can actually perform more efficiently and better when you have some of these other centers online. So you're not just operating more from a sympathetic nervous system point of view. And that's, and that just kind of goes back to nasal breathing. In fact, with the Australian rugby team, I see that the Australian rugby team, they're in the last World Cup, they were training, they were putting white ankle tape over their mouths and getting them to run. And so they're training by not getting to go into that mouth breathing posture and wasting energy that they didn't have to waste, basically. So some of the research here between physical activity and the body's defense system, you can press pause with this, but it's all good again. There's obviously a relationship between moderate exercise training and an illness risk. Exercise training has an anti-inflammatory influence. Illness risk is increased in athletes during periods of intensified training and competition. So that once again goes back to if you're pushing yourself too hard and you're sick, it does reduce your immune system. But also if you're not sick and you're pushing yourself to where you're intensified training, is that actually helping your immune system? It's kind of inconclusive right now, yeah, so stick with the next video when we look at emotional states and how that can affect your immune system. Okay, be well everyone, and any questions, please let me know.